Hey, what's up, folks? Welcome back to On Texas Football and welcome back to Football Theory. I'm lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers. Pleased to be joined by the coach, former high school football coach at Vernon, Capel, Brownwood, Rotan, Belton. Also played college football at Abilene Christian. Coached there as well and was on the staff at University of Texas for multiple head football coaches. And now you can catch his work at ShipleyRanches.com. It's our own coach, Bob Shipley. What's going on, Coach? Good to see you.
What's happening? How you been? Still licking wounds? Still trying to figure it out?
Yeah, got through those stages of grief. Yeah, so I'm at acceptance now, Coach. We'll talk a little bit about it, but yeah, I've accepted it. I've gotten out my critiques about it, and I rewatched it probably twice already. So I'm done with it. I mean, now I'm happy about. Man, you made it to the Final Four 2 years in a row. Hard to complain about it, but man, it's tough in the moment to see that, have that perspective in the moment. I think a lot of Longhorn fans are probably coming around now to, man, what a hell of a 2-year run it's been, and even more excited about what's on the horizon for 2025.
Yeah, it really is. And it's just people make fun of coaches for saying this, but it's so true. And at times like this, you realize it's really hard to win a championship. Man. It's really hard. Everything has to fall into place, your injuries, your schedule, maybe this game's on the road. Yeah. Had it been at home, it would have been a different, just little things like that. And then it can come down to just your season we could argue it came down to one or two calls on a goal line.
Oh yeah.
That we hadn't seen the opponent do, which, as you showed me, is exactly what happened in the game, in the semifinal game this year. Two plays that could have decided our season were looks defensively that our opponent had never shown us. And so when you start doing that, you look at, a great program like Ohio State and then them saving something in their hip pocket for us. It's everything has to hit just exactly right. Look at 2005, look at the fumble go down. We're sitting here thinking, man, there ain't no way. And then all of a sudden, what was his name? The fullback breaks loose and he turns around, and tries to pitch it back to somebody. I mean, who would have ever thought that was a big part of us winning a national championship?
Okay. Yep.
So it's just I'm just saying it's little things. Little things have to happen, and for us just to make the semis 2 years in a row, as you said, no other team in the country's done it the last 2 years. So pretty cool.
Yeah, no, really cool. And we kind of start there because one of the things we'll get into before we start kind of talking about, we'll get into Texas. Only been 5 losses right in the last 2 years for Texas, and they've been close losses too. Not like Texas, other than that first Georgia game, but most of them have been close losses. And we'll talk about the commonalities, the threads, the common threads that have linked those losses. What are the issues that may be reoccurring for Texas to keep them from getting over the hump, to get through the Final Four, into the championship game, and ultimately to win a championship? So we'll talk about that and get into it a little bit. But just Coach just mentioned, one of the things that's been making the rounds this week has been the sound of Jim Knowles, the defensive coordinator from Ohio State. For those who haven't heard, he did come out. He was asked about the sequence, the goal line stand for Ohio State to win them the game. Ultimately led to a fumble return touchdown, forced fumble return touchdown for Ohio State. And he said the first two, he just basically kind of said we kind of overpowered them. He did mention, though, Coach, that they went heavy. They went 5 down. They had 5 down linemen. I think kind of 2 overhangs outside of those 5 down linemen. So they went with their kind of heavy goal line defense. And by the way, which is one of the best defenses in the country, if not the best defense in the country. Yep. In terms of their goal line prowess, if you will. And he said that they overpowered Texas initially when Texas tried to go under center and went with the old school fullback, and they're heavy versus Texas is heavy. And then the second play, which of course is the infamous pitch by Texas, he said that on that specific play, he said I understood why they did the pitch, the toss. I'm paraphrasing. He said because we're vulnerable there because we're heavy. we're vulnerable on the outside. We're
Yeah,
vulnerable.
he ran the same defensive alignment 2 times in a row.
And so he said we were vulnerable to the toss because we had stacked the box and all of our basically allocated all of our resources to heavy, which was to obviously at the line of scrimmage. So Sark decided to, basically kind of rearrange the matchup, if you will, and try to get the matchup advantage and the numbers advantage on the outside. But if you remember, I think Sark expected them to bump. Remember, they go in motion. They motion Juan Davis to that side they tossed to. I think they thought they were going to bump it, Coach, and therefore they would have had a numbers advantage. But they didn't bump it. They traveled. That DB traveled and therefore gave them an extra man over on that side too. Now, I don't know if it would matter because Caleb Downs just blew the damn play up anyway. But I think maybe on film, since we now know Ohio State was doing things on film at the end of the game that they had not shown previously, I think that was a surprise to Texas because it didn't make sense numbers-wise because they didn't have the numbers advantage, but maybe because they didn't expect that DB to travel. And that was the second down. And as Coach mentioned, Jim Knowles said we ran a play on 3rd and 4th down defensively, a coverage that we had not shown on film and not played all season long. And I always say, Coach, to win big games, you got to break tendency. That's just one because there's so much preparation. These coaches, all these coaches are good at what they do. They're the best coaches in the country, and their coaching staffs are fantastic and have these huge support staffs. And they have guys sitting in film rooms looking at tendencies and trends and patterns and what they do on this down, in that situation, on 2nd and long, and first and 10, and 3rd and long, and 3rd and short. They know the tendencies. And if you don't break those tendencies at the right time, and it's got to be at the right time because you can do it and not do it at the right time, and then it doesn't matter. If you don't do it at the right time, Coach, I'm telling you, it'll come back to haunt you and it'll blow up in your face. And I think Ohio State in this chess match, they did a great job of breaking tendency at the right time on Texas, of course, in clutch time.
Yeah, they did, and it just goes to show that there's so much preparation that goes in for your opponent, but you can literally drive yourself nuts by chasing all the rabbits down the holes. Okay, well, what if they did this? Well, what if they did that? Well, my response is, well, what if monkeys fly out your butt? I mean, you just deal. Who knows? Who knows what's going to happen? You know what I mean? So, but you can literally drive yourself nuts. Yeah. But what if they did this? Oh, but what if they did this? That's what I think drives defensive coaches nuts because of all the things the offense can do. But it still could drive an offensive guy bonkers too, because he's like, I mean, and a lot of people just don't think like that. They think, okay, goal line, they're going to do what they do, and they're going to do it well. But they didn't.
They didn't. Yeah.
They didn't. And so, like I said, little things like that most people don't even know about. I'm so thankful that reporter asked him that question because it makes sense now why Sark ran that play, because it was a play that defensive alignment was vulnerable to.
Yeah. No doubt about it. And the coverage, I don't know exactly what it was because Jim Knowles did not detail it. When I went back and looked at it, it looked, Coach, basically kind of like a matchup zone. They, no matter what pattern or route construction Texas ran, whether they had 3 guys to that side or it was 2 twins to a side, they had an extra man there. They had 3 on their 2. They had 4 on their 3. They ended up, and brilliant. They ended up rushing, I believe, 4 on that 4th down. And I think they rushed 3 maybe on the 3rd down or vice versa. Right now, it's hard for me to recall, but they didn't blitz. They dropped back in coverage, kept their 2 safeties deep, but the safeties ended up playing almost a matchup zone to either side.
Which, as you said earlier, that Quinn held on to the ball because he was totally not expecting that.
He was like,
who would expect it when they haven't shown it all year? You
haven't shown it all year. How am I supposed to prepare for it? And that's when, I mean, that's ultimately why on both sides of the ball, defensively and offensively, my coach Shanahan, my man Kyle Shanahan always says, be coachable. Don't be a robot. At one point, I need you to go be a football player. Make me right. Go make me right. Because sometimes my play calling, it ain't the right play call. They had a better play call. Go make me right. And I don't even know if in that situation if there was a way to do it. Nobody was open. If you want to know that, I went back and watched it,
no,
and nobody and Jim Knowles said that too. He was like, we had everybody covered. Like there was, other than tucking the rock and making something happen, there was nobody open and extending the play maybe, but initially nobody was open there. All right. Before we get into the 5 losses, let me thank my former teammate and lifetime Longhorn, Dr. Brett Robin. He's a orthopedic specialist at Austin Orthopedic Institute, and he's sponsoring Football Theory. So really appreciate him, Dr. Brett Robin, a former Longhorn running back, my former teammate, a lifetime Longhorn, knows what it takes to stay in the game, and he's here for athletes of all ages, specializing in musculoskeletal health. Dr. Robin treats joint pain and injuries with a conservative approach first, but also offers advanced surgical options, including arthroscopic procedures, fracture management, and total joint replacements with convenient offices in Austin, Georgetown, and Killeen. Dr. Robin is accepting new patients now, and if you're looking for a top-notch orthopedic specialist, give Dr. Robin a call at 512-856-1000 and get back to your active lifestyle and doing what you love. All right, Coach, just looking at the 5 losses now on the resume for Texas in the last 2 years, and it's been a hell of a run. The only team to make it to the Final Four 2 straight years. So the program is definitely headed in the right direction, and the future looks extremely bright. There's no doubt about that. But when I start looking at those 5 losses, I believe you're starting with the Ohio State and working our way backwards. Goal line, obviously in red zone offense, has been a recurring problem or issue with Texas. If you look at, you basically in your 4 of your 5 losses, you've either had red zone deficiencies or red zone inefficiency, or you've been inefficient and deficient on the goal line. Oklahoma, remember the goal line staying there for Oklahoma, and Texas couldn't get in. Of course, most recently here at Ohio State, that was an issue. That's 2 of your 5 losses. Red zone problems became an issue in the Washington game when you had a chance in clutch time to make something happen there. And your red zone offense also, the Georgia game in overtime, the SEC title game, essentially, that's a lot of red zone offense there, settling for field goals instead of being able to punch it in for a touchdown. Now, we're obviously being very nitpicky because the margins are very, very thin when you're talking about football at championship level. But there's no doubt, Coach, that after 4 years of a sample size and watching Sark's program and watching it ascend, red zone offense is a recurring issue. And ever since the post Bijan Rojo era, and I always say I think we're still dealing with a post Bijan Rojo hangover on red zone offense. Otherwise, I can't explain it. Being 101st and 90th in red zone offense, and 120th and 54th in touchdown percentage in the red zone the last 2 years, it's definitely cost you a couple of ball games here and there. There's no doubt about it.
Well, one reason for that could be, it is the fact that our inability to run the ball, which is because of injuries to running backs. So there's a little bit of grace there, I guess you might say. The thing that stands out to me about this list, they all have one thing in common, Rod.
What
They're
is
all offensive.
Yeah, that's true. The reason I didn't go deep, because that's a good point, Coach, because the defense hadn't had 2-year issues. They fixed them. Like pass defense was an issue last year. They fixed it. And rush defense was an issue 2 years ago, and they fixed it. So the red zone issue has been a 2-year issue.
Yeah, secondary coverage was an issue.
Yep.
It's not anymore. We
it's
fixed
not anymore.
it. Now, so we got that fixed. Now, if we can fix this offense in the offseason and not go back and make the same mistakes we were making defensively, we got a chance. We got a chance to have a really, really good football team. We know we're going to be a good football team.
Oh, yeah.
We just, it's just those little things that are the difference between a great football team and a championship football team. I think we're a great football team. You look across, when you make the Final Four 2 years in a row, you got something really great going. We're not quite championship yet. We got to fix the red zone offense, obviously. We got to be able to punch the ball in the end zone. And I do think the running backs carry a big part of that resolution to those 2 problems.
No, No, I think you own to some, Coach. If my theory is it's a Bijan Rojo hangover. When you had Bijan and Rojo, you did not have red zone issues. You did not have really goal line issues. But since then, even though you've had some good running backs, of course, you've had some of those red zone goal line issues. So maybe it is a type of running back. You lose Cedric Baxter. A lot of people believe Cedric Baxter would have made a difference because can be a power back, can run inside. So to your point, the goal line issues / red zone issues, maybe it is about having, a special set of running backs. And because of the injuries at running back, you once again had a setback in your red zone offense. And so I'm not opposed to that, Coach. Maybe it's the type of running backs and having special running backs that in that very tight area. Think about the red zone. I mean, it's a very small, tight area. So people always talk about speed to power transition for running backs, but it's more of a twitch to power transition. And you got to have great footwork and you got to have great vision. I'm with you. I think maybe it is something about the types of running backs Texas has or had available to them, I should say, last season that did not necessarily fit the goal line / red zone offense.
It's the physical tools. And then it's instinct. It's instinct. That guy that can find, I'm going to tell you, Emmitt Smith was the best at finding a little crease. Just find a little crease and splitting defenders. Splitting defenders was something that he was really good at. Yeah. It's a lot harder to arm tackle than it is to try to run over somebody. Splitting defenders, finding that little crease, having the athleticism and the burst of speed to make, even if it's 3 or 4 yards, when another guy's shuffling back there trying to get back to the line of scrimmage. It's the guys that understand the red zone. They understand the sense of urgency with every single yard. It's all a sense of urgency. That's what I love about Rojo. I don't think you ever saw him tackle for a loss. That dude had the strongest legs and hips I have ever seen for a guy his size, because he would keep moving the pile, keep churning, and just keep with his forward body lean. He was what he did for his size, to me, was an amazing act of strength and athleticism, and just flat out desire to win this down. And I don't know that we've had that, and I don't know that we will have that very often, because he's very special.
Yeah, you're right about that. I was thinking about when you said that, those Ohio State running backs, and I remember when they got in the goal line, I was like, I don't think we're gonna stop them backs.
No,
because they have a certain style, like you said, a certain attitude that they run with, and they're powerful. They're powerful and twitchy. That's a great. I think it could be, like I said, it's nothing against the running backs. They're just not that style of running backs,
right?
And we really had to have that.
But they excelled coming out of catching the ball out of the backfield.
Exactly.
And so we did some red zone damage, hitting our backs out of the backfield, but not being able to run the ball. Because had we been able to run the ball, they probably weren't going to be in that matchup defense that they were in, because there was really not a threat for us to run it. Certainly from the quarterback, we weren't going to take a chance on getting him, hurt again, and that's not his forte.
And then, Coach, to add to that, since we're getting close to the end of it, the other thing that I think is, and these all things seem connected, honestly. The run game overall you go look at your 3 losses this year. I mean, you rushed for fewer than 100 yards in those. You had 4 games where you rushed for fewer than 100 yards, but one of those was the Arizona State game. Wasn't a loss, but was a game that you went to overtime with. And I'm saying inferior opponent, but an opponent that surely a lot of people thought you were going to be a double-digit favorite in. So the run game wasn't an issue though last year. It wasn't as inconsistent, but you didn't face SEC, you didn't face Georgia, so different beasts altogether. So the running game, I just think they have to have a pivot from the zone concepts that they became so comfortable with, and nothing wrong with that. But when they had to pivot, and versus Georgia, they tried to pivot in the SEC title game and run more power gap schemes, and without very much success. And against Ohio State, of course, as we predicted, shut down their zone concepts and they really couldn't run the football from a power standpoint. I think that has something to do with your goal line issues as well, because that's what goal line is. You ain't run a lot of zone on goal line, man. It's power gap schemes coming right at you. It's bully ball. It's down. It's a downhill running attack. And I do think those issues are somewhat related, that that it's not your strength as an offensive line, even though they're big humans, to run gap power schemes. They're better at zone blocking schemes. And yet when you have to run goal line against opponents who are up to your caliber, oftentimes Texas falls short. So I think those teams are related. And you know what? They got a new O-line coach. So maybe with this O-line, since you'll have four new starters on that O-line, maybe their strength is something different.
Yeah.
Because this O-line's been together for a long time. And I think that's been their strength for a long time, pass blocking and zone blocking in the run game. But now maybe this will be a different group. Maybe you got some road graders with this group potentially.
Well, one thing that seems to go unspoken, or people don't realize it or whatever, when you're blocking the outside zone, that's a technique that doesn't require the offensive lineman to come off low and hard, okay, because they're moving laterally. Yep. They just want to dance with a guy if that's what he wants to do. I mean, they just have to keep him maintained, and if he crosses inside, then the next lineman inside picks him up, and I go up to the second level. That, along with guys that have probably been taught since the 7th grade, because so many people are throwing the ball now, they've been taught since the 7th grade to retreat when the ball snapped because they're pass blocking. Mm-hmm. And so our offensive line did a great job pass blocking. Not always. We had some injuries. We had a few breakdowns here and there. But when you're taught to retreat every snap, and you're taught to look up as you're running the outside zone and see if somebody from the second level is coming, that's totally different than coming off the ball with the flat back and knocking somebody as a road grader back. We just don't do that very well as an offensive line. And I wonder if it's because we spend so much time with our pass sets. We spend so much time with our outside zones, and we don't spend enough time, maybe, I don't know, it's just a thought, coming off low and hard with a flat back and knocking guys back when it seems insurmountable. I've worked for coaches before who will put they'll put like 13 people on defense, and just make it as hard as you possibly can, for those guys coming off the ball. So that's just a thought I've had this season, and I think it probably is, has a little validity.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I like that, Coach. Just the mentality of the offensive lineman, instead of being passive, they get to be aggressive. I agree 100%. Another thing, I know people talk about the third quarter issues, and I brought those up as well, but not in the 5 losses, right? Basically, remember, that wasn't an issue against Oklahoma last year. It did pop up against Washington last year, but not an issue in the first Georgia matchup. That was one of your better quarters of the year. Not an issue. I think actually, Ohio State, I don't know if that was one of your better quarters too. So Arizona, I know Arizona State, that wasn't a loss. So I think your third quarter issues, I don't know if that's one that's been recurring. I'm just going to throw that out there that if that doesn't happen next season, I think that was more an issue just late down the stretch for Texas for whatever reason. Coach, before we get out of here, those turnovers, I don't know if we saw how detrimental they could be for Texas, but it certainly was an issue. You were bottom 10 in the country in giveaways. I believe Texas ended the season with, if I'm not mistaken, maybe it's 26 or 27 giveaways. In the 5 losses, you lost the turnover margin 14-7. That's a problem. Yeah. Almost 2-1. You lost the turnover margin.
Yeah.
Got to play cleaner games. That's a big part of it too. But new quarterback, praising new O-line. We'll see if Texas can clean up some of that. But future looks bright for the Longhorns, and certainly very, very excited about what the Longhorns have accomplished in the last 2 years as well. All right, thanks, Coach, for everything that you do. Appreciate it. One last shout out to our sponsor, Dr. Brett Robin, former Longhorn cornerback, my former teammate, knows what it takes to stay in the game, and he's here for athletes of all ages. That's right, folks. At the Austin Orthopedic Institute, they specialize in musculoskeletal health. Dr. Robin treats joint pain and injuries with a conservative approach first, but also offers advanced surgical options, including arthroscopic procedures, fracture management, and total joint joint replacements with convenient offices in Austin, Georgetown, and Killeen. Dr. Robin is accepting new patients right now. And if you're looking for a top-notch orthopedic specialist, give Dr. Robin a call today at 512-856-1000 and get back to your active lifestyle and doing what you love. Thank you to Dr. Brett Robin. Thank you, Coach, as well, for all the knowledge. Thank you guys out there for watching and for listening. Thank you to Matthew behind the scenes. And until next time, welcome Horns.